My name is Kaylee and I thought it would be nice to end this year with my top 5 discoveries of 2025. This video is sponsored by Hungry Minds, but as always, more on the sponsor later in the video. At number 5 we have a new pyramid that was discovered in Peru. I will be telling you all about the latest discovery in Peru, where archaeologists uncovered an ancient pyramid. But before we dive into the discovery itself, I think it's best to take a quick look at the location and the surrounding area of where this discovery was made, because there used to be a culture present in this area that created pyramids around the same time as the ancient Egyptians. If you love history and you love pyramids, I think it's safe to say that you've heard of the ancient Peruvian Caral culture, at least, once or twice in your life. The Caral culture is considered to be the oldest pre-Hispanic civilization in the Americas, although the Casma culture may be older, or at least equally as old. So the Caral culture is very well known for its ancient pyramids at the sacred city of Caral Supe, which is an archaeological site located in the Supe Valley near the modern-day town of Caral, around 182 kilometers north of the capital of Peru, named Lima. The sacred city of Caral Supe is located some 23 kilometers from the coast and is situated around 350 meters above sea level. The city of Caral Supe is considered to be the oldest city in the Americas, although again, that does depend on the Casma culture, as their structures may have been older. Hey, so I discovered something that absolutely blew my mind, and I had to share it with you guys because it's honestly the kind of book that makes you think differently about everything. It's called The Book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding Civilization. And yes, I'm aware of how pretentious that sounds. But hear me out, because this isn't your typical history book. Imagine if someone took 400 pages and threw in 180 topics about humanity's greatest inventions and discoveries and made it beautiful. I'm talking illustrations that look like engineering drawings mixed with medieval art. The production quality is insane. Premium paper, this gorgeous hardcover, it's the kind of thing that you actually want to flip through. What I love most, it connects all the dots. You see how one invention led to another, how civilizations built on the discoveries of their ancestors. As someone who is obsessed with understanding why things happened and how we got here, this book is basically a visual love letter to human innovation. And honestly, if you're stuck on gift ideas, whether it's for yourself or for someone who's just into history or just someone who appreciates beautiful things, this is it. It raised over $3 million on Kickstarter for a reason, and it became a bestseller. There's a special Christmas discount available. Use my promo code Kaylee for 10% off. Link is in the description down below. Go grab it and let me know what your favorite page is. Around 5,000 years ago, the Caral culture started building in the area we now know to be the sacred city of Caral Supe, and they continued building in this area for around 1,200 years until 3,800 years ago. In 2009, the area of the sacred city of Caral Supe was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is in these modern-day borders where the newly discovered pyramid was found. Now it's almost time to take a look into this newly discovered pyramid. So there is an area known as the Chupacicaro Archaeological Settlement where 12 structures have been found so far, which is located about 1 kilometer west of the sacred city of Caral Supe, and is considered to be part of the 38 hectares of the World Heritage Site. Chupacicaro is located near a small ravine of water. Some of these 12 structures are public spaces, while others are considered to be more ceremonial in nature. And these 12 structures are scattered across the area, crowning the tops of the small hills in the ravine and surrounding a central space. All these structures here at Chupacicaro have been built somewhere between 3000 and 1800 BCE. So the buildings here at Chupacicaro all vary in size and orientation and their characteristics, which could indicate their functional factors. So for instance, small residential buildings are overseen by a main building which features a sunken circular plaza, which is very typical of this period in the area. The discoveries of these 12 buildings in the past have led experts to claim that a small urban settlement used to exist here in this area. And the team led by Dr. Ruth Shady, which is the team that made the Chupacicaro discovery, will now focus on mapping the entire site to understand how big it is. So, how was this new pyramid discovered? I bet all you watching this video are wondering this. So a team of the Caral Archaeological Zone began clearing a patch of overgrown trees and bushes, and they stumbled upon some rocks, which later turned out to be the ruins of an ancient building. The small cleaning project quickly turned into a large-scale research effort, as the overgrown trees and bushes had been hiding an ancient structure. So it's a pyramid-like building, as it's now been identified by archaeologists, and they estimate that the pyramid dates back to at least 3,800 years. The pyramidal building has 3 rectangular platforms with a central staircase providing access to the top levels. In the walls, the archaeologists discovered large rocks that were placed vertically. These rocks were used as indicators for the building's corners and central staircase. When the researchers were examining the location of the newly discovered pyramid, they noticed that Chupacicaro was built strategically and possibly to enable relations between the ancient people who settled in the lower area of the Supe Valley and the Huaura coastline. The pyramid they've now discovered was not visible from the valley below, which suggests that it was an extension of the sacred city of Caral Supe. One of the most significant finds at the site is actually a geoglyph showing the profile of a head, rendered in the Sechine style using angular stones. The geoglyph is 62.1 by 30.3 meters, which equates to 203.7 by 99.4 feet in dimension, and it's visible from a specific point in the ancient Chupacicaro settlement. Remember when I mentioned the Casma Sechine culture at the start of this video? Well, I actually made a video about this culture and their incredible structures a few years ago here on the channel. I will link to that video in the description down below, and I'll put it as a card in the upper right corner for you to click on. It's a video I made all the way back in the summer of 2021, which honestly, after all the stuff I've gone through these past few years, feels like a lifetime ago. I personally love the ancient civilizations from Peru and their incredible architecture. They are among my absolute favorites. So I'm very excited to see what else they will uncover at Chupacicaro and the Caral Supe archaeological site. But what do you think of this latest discovery? Another ancient pyramid from an ancient Peruvian civilization. How exciting, right? Let me know in the comments down below. At number 4, we have the discovery of a new human species that once lived in Europe. I'm going to tell you all about the latest discovery from Spain, where researchers have discovered the oldest known evidence of a human species in Western Europe. Is it possible that a previously unknown human species, or subspecies, roamed in Europe without us realizing until now? Well, yes, that's actually entirely possible. This discovery will change our understanding of the very first human species who inhabited Western Europe, and this discovery may add another previously unknown human species to our evolutionary tree. So first things first, where was this discovery made, and is the location of the discovery significant? Well, yeah, the location of the discovery is definitely very significant because at this very location, the previously known oldest fossilized remains of a human species in Europe were discovered many years ago, which belonged to a Homo antecessor. So the fossilized remains were found in northern Spain in the Atapuerca mountain range. This mountain range is located in the province of Burgos. The Atapuerca mountain range is among the most important sites for researching human evolution and has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2000. So there are actually numerous archaeological sites in the Atapuerca mountain range, and the most notable are the Grandolina Galleria, Cima de los Huesos, El Portalón, and Cima del Elefante. Cima del Elefante was already quite famous due to the discovered bones belonging to Homo antecessor that were previously known as being the oldest bones of a human species in Western Europe, dating to around 1.2 million years ago. And it is actually here at Cima del Elefante that this new discovery was made as well, as researchers uncovered the fragments of a skull dating back to approximately 1.4 million years ago. So this discovery itself was actually made back in 2022 or 2022 when a student came across the bones during excavations. The bones that were discovered came from the left side of the face, specifically the upper jaw and part of the cheekbone. From the shape of the teeth, the researchers knew that the bones must have belonged to a human relative. So for the following 2 years after this discovery was made, the team conducted research on the bones, and they have now finally published their analysis, and they nicknamed the individual these bones belong to as Pink, after, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and calling it the earliest human face of Western Europe. So at first, when they discovered these bones, the research team kind of assumed that these bones belonged to a Homo antecessor, even though these bones are actually quite a bit older than the oldest Homo antecessor bones that they previously discovered. But it turns out that the bones of the face they discovered are actually surprisingly different from that of Homo antecessor. So the researchers are now of the belief that it is unlikely that these bones belong to a Homo antecessor individual, as Homo antecessor seem to have emerged around 1.2 million years ago, which is nearly 200,000 years later. So the researchers are now of the belief that the fragments of this skull belong to a possible Homo erectus subspecies, or possibly even an entirely new species. Well, the actual official term the researchers have used is Homo affinis erectus, affinis being the Latin word for similar to. So the facial remains they discovered at Cima del Elefante belong to an individual from a species very similar to Homo erectus. But how is this possible? So I recently made an updated version video on the species of Homo erectus here on the channel, in which I explained that Homo erectus emerged around 2 million years ago and started to migrate out of Africa around 1.8 million years ago through the Levant area. There are many sites in Asia, East Africa and even Indonesia where Homo erectus fossils were discovered, showing us their clear migration pattern. But up until now, we have never discovered any Homo erectus fossils in Western Europe dating this far back. But it looks like we are going to have to update our history books when it comes to the first human species roaming in Europe. Instead of Homo antecessor, who was better known as the pioneer man, being the very first humans to inhabit Western Europe, it seems that Homo erectus, or at least a subspecies or species very similar to Homo erectus, were the first to inhabit Western Europe, and were actually the true pioneer species. Unfortunately, because so very little of the skeleton remains nowadays, the researchers were unable to figure out if the individual it belonged to was male or female. But future paleoproteomic analysis of the tooth enamel, which has proteins that can indicate an individual's sex, may reveal this information one day. What is also important to note is that this is actually the third time this team has discovered hominin fossils in unexpectedly deep layers in this collection of caves. So the first time occurred in 1997 when bones belonging to Homo antecessor were first discovered in the Atapuerca mountain range, dating to approximately 850,000 years ago. The second time was in 2008, which occurred actually a couple layers above where this latest discovery was made at Cima del Elefante, and this fossil dates back to 1.2 million years ago, which is currently attributed to be a Homo antecessor individual. But after this new discovery, it may turn out that this was actually also a Homo affinis erectus, as they might be the same species as Pink. But bones weren't the only discovery made recently. The team also discovered stone tools here at Cima del Elefante in the same sediment layers as the fossilized remains of Pink. The simple stone tools were made from local quartz, chert and limestone, and the team also discovered animal bones with cut marks created by humans as well. So it seems like 1.1 million years ago, Homo affinis erectus disappeared. And it's quite possible they lived alongside Homo antecessor for a short while in this area. But the most important piece of information that we know for a fact after this discovery is that these fossilized remains represent the earliest human fossil found in Western Europe up until now. And this research shows that a previously unknown human population inhabited Western Europe, something that we may have never found out if excavations didn't continue to be carried out in the Atapuerca Mountains. So once again, the Atapuerca Mountains reveal another piece of the puzzle that is our evolutionary tale. And of course, work in the Atapuerca Mountains and excavations at Cima del Elefante will continue, in hopes to discover more fossils to learn more about who these hominins were, where they came from, and what interactions they may have had with other hominins in the area. So what do you think of this latest discovery from Spain? Are you as excited as I am about this previously unknown human species roaming around in Western Europe? Let me know in the comments down below. At number 3, we have 140,000-year-old Homo erectus fossils found in Indonesia. We are going to take a look into the recently discovered Homo erectus fossils that were discovered during dredging operations in the Madura Strait in Indonesia, an area that used to be part of Sundaland, a landmass similar to Doggerland, similar in the sense that part of it now lies under the seabed. The Madura Strait is located between the Indonesian islands of Java and Madura. It's also often referred to as the Surabaya Strait, although this name is not accepted in the official cartography. So there was a large construction project in the Madura Strait from 2014 until 2015, and that's when this latest fossil discovery was actually uncovered. Contractors pulled around 5 million cubic meters, which equates to 177 million cubic feet, of sand and sandstone from the seabed near the port city of Surabaya on the island of Java to create an artificial island. The contractors used a trailing suction hopper dredger to remove the sediment. This is a ship that drags a steel structure along the seabed, breaking up the sediment and mixing it up with water. A suction pipe then hovers up the sediment, and this process, called dredging, can negatively impact marine life. But the amount of damage varies depending on the location and the species involved. As you can imagine, invertebrates, eggs, and larvae are most vulnerable to this practice. But the contractors and the researchers, and thus the dredging itself, was subject to environmental impact assessment and supervision under Indonesian legislation, as Harold Berghuis, a researcher studying Homo erectus at the Leiden University in the Netherlands, told Life Science. So the research of the fossils was carried out by researchers from the Leiden University in the Netherlands, in collaboration with a team of specialists from Indonesia, Australia, Germany, and Japan. So during the dredging operations in the Madura Strait, the archaeologists discovered 6,372 fossilized remains belonging to 36 different vertebrate species, including Komodo dragons, turtles, sharks, elephants, and Homo erectus. This is actually the first discovery of fossils from the seabed between these two Indonesian islands, the islands being Java and Madura. The hovered-up sediment was discharged at a land reclamation site to create 100 hectares, which equates to 250 acres, sandy island. Berghuis was able to access the site as a geotechnical consultant for the port of Surabaya. And he spent many weeks searching for fossils on his hands and knees. Of course, as you can imagine, he dreamed of finding a hominin fossil during this time. But it wasn't until the very last day that he was out there collecting fossils that he spotted one. So he told Life Science that it was already getting dark and he was sitting down to enjoy the sunset. And then right beside him, he noticed a fossil that reminded him so much of the only Dutch Neanderthal, which is a brow bone that you can see here of a Neanderthal and a very well-known fossil in the Netherlands that was dredged from the North Sea. So he took the fossil, a skull fragment, to his hotel room and compared it to images of this brow bone of the Dutch Neanderthal known as Krijn. We later named him, you know? A Dutch Neanderthal was the only one, he needed a name. It's fine. Its pronounced brow ridge was similar to Neanderthals and other ancient humans, and later on Berghuis and his colleagues determined that the skull fragment belonged to an adult or adolescent Homo erectus. So the team also identified another Homo erectus skull fragment in the fossils that Berghuis had collected on the sandy island. Based on the thickness of this second skull fragment, the team determined that this individual had not yet reached adulthood. As you can imagine, the researchers were not able to determine how these Homo erectus individuals died. You know, you only have two fragments, two individuals. It's not much to go on. So most of you know that Homo erectus fossils have been found in the past on the island of Java in Indonesia, and the most famous being the skulls found at the Trinil, Sangiran and Gadong sites. For a long time, researchers were under the impression that Homo erectus had lived in isolation for a long time on the island of Java. But this new discovery actually shows that the Javanese Homo erectus dispersed over the surrounding lowlands of the ancient landmass of Sundaland during periods when the sea level was lower. Again, Sundaland is mostly now below water. What's above water is like Indonesia and all its islands. Just like Doggerland with like England, Scotland, Ireland and Northwest Europe. So researchers uncovered that it seems that Homo erectus spread along the major rivers in the area of Sundaland, where they had water, shellfish, fish, edible plants, seeds and fruit all year round. We had already found evidence of Homo erectus collecting river shells in the past, but among the new finds from the dredging operations, the researchers have now discovered cut marks on the bones of water turtles and large numbers of broken bovid bones, which point to hunting and consumption of bone marrow. So the cut marks found on the turtles are the earliest evidence of a human species hunting these water turtles in Southeast Asia. It also seems that Homo erectus as well as other human species in the area hunted cow-like bovids in their prime, which is something the Indonesian Homo erectus was actually not known for, because this hunting strategy is mostly associated with more modern humans on the Asian mainland. So this raises the possibility that the newly discovered Homo erectus population learned and copied this hunting strategy from other human relatives who came to live in this area. But there is of course the possibility that this Homo erectus population developed this hunting strategy independently. It's unclear if this is the result of a kind of cultural exchange between different human species in this area. So if I've got you intrigued and you want to learn more about Homo erectus, the species, I actually recently created a video with updated information about this enigmatic species that paved the way for all other human species that once roamed the earth, including, our own species. We all know that Homo erectus played quite the important part in our own evolutionary history. They emerged a little over 2 million years ago, and they were the first species to migrate out of Africa, migrating all the way to the modern-day islands in Indonesia. They lived in this area of Indonesia for hundreds of thousands of years until they were slowly getting replaced by more modern species, like for instance, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans around 350,000 years ago on the Asian mainland. But Homo erectus seems to have survived on the island of Java until around 117,000 to 108,000 years ago, when they eventually went extinct. Our own species of Homo sapiens didn't actually reach Southeast Asia or the Indonesian islands until around 77,000 years ago, which means that Homo erectus was already extinct by at least 30,000 years. So the fossil collection that Berghuis and his colleagues found is housed in the Geological Museum in Bandung in Indonesia, and the museum is planning an exhibition at this museum, and possibly temporary exhibitions at other locations. So what do you think of this latest discovery of 2 Homo erectus skull fragments dating to around 140,000 years ago, give or take? And yeah, they were discovered in Indonesia at the Madura Strait, and I want to know what you think about this new discovery. At number 2, we have my sister's discovery that the giant marine predator, Mosasaur, thrived in fresh water at the Hell Creek Formation in North Dakota. Today we are joined by my sister who has another paper being published, and today we are going to talk all about the Mosasaur. First of all, introduce yourself a little bit to the audience.
So my name is Melanie During. I am Kaylee's older sister, and I'm a vertebrate paleontologist, so I specialize in all things dead and big with a spinal column.
Can you tell us about how the Mosasaur tooth was discovered and what the significance of this find was?
Absolutely. In 2022, I was not present. I actually got to know this crew the year after. So in 2022, people from the NDGS, so the North Dakota Geological Survey, held a dig. And this is the type of dig actually you can sign up for. So if you ever want to dig with the NDGS, you go for Friends of NDGS and you can dig with them. This was one of those digs, and one of the staff members found a T-Rex tooth in such abominable shape, they had to put a plaster jacket around it. So this tooth, T-Rex tooth, was, I mean, they're pretty big, like this big, but it was shattered. So they had to cover it. So they glued it, they put a plaster jacket over it. And to get the jacket out, you have to trench around it, dig a little mushroom out of it so you can flip it. And as they were doing that, Trissa, a good friend of mine by now, accidentally saw something fall out. And she looked closely and she observed that it was, in fact, a Mosasaur tooth that fell out. And then when the jacket got back to the lab, the intern started preparing it from the other end, and then they found a brachychampsa, which is a type of crocodilian, upper jaw on the other side. So we have a T-Rex tooth, T-Rex, terrestrial. We have a Mosasaur tooth, marine. And we have a freshwater crocodilian upper jaw. So yeah, that raised a bunch of questions.
Yeah, so that was the significance of this find. That
Exactly.
Mosasaur tooth combined
I
with...
mean, you start to wonder who invaded whose territory here.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So how are you able to determine that this Mosasaur wasn't just a visitor to the river, or that the tooth hadn't simply, you know, end up in the river?
So for starters, the whole deposit, even though there were still, you could still see some sedimentology and stratigraphy inside the section where we were working, the whole block was displaced. So it actually comes from somewhere a little bit higher up and slumped downhill a little bit.
All right.
So we knew that there was some form of displacement. So we needed to first decide or find a way to define where they were found together. Does this mean they died together? And then, indeed, who invaded whose territory?
Yeah.
First of all, did they die together? So what we did a stable isotope analysis on 3 different elements. So on carbon, oxygen, and strontium. Because if something turns to fossil, the transition from a living thing to a fossil can also really alter these isotopes. So if you only measure one of them, you might just be measuring the fossilization and not the dying part or the living part. And so that's actually why I wanted to measure more than one stable isotope analysis. So in terms of carbon and oxygen, they all plotted together. Strontium took me a little longer, so we had to wait. Eventually, we measured strontium as well. They all plot together. In other words, they all died together, likely lived together, or at least met up shortly before dying together. We have the 3 at the same place, but we also have the same type of signature for the T-Rex and the Mosasaur. Although the Mosasaur appears to have a higher trophic level, which could suggest it ate. It was higher in the food chain than T-Rex.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah, damn.
But I mean, that's really hard to
determine.
I mean, I can't say that with what we measured, it's not strong enough, but let's just say that it wasn't far below for sure.
Yeah.
I can exclude that. There's certain types of carbon fractionation that changes below water. If you dive very deep or for prolonged periods, it will change your carbon signature. But this is always expected to be in the negative end, and ours is incredibly positive. So, I mean, it looks like it could have nibbled on a hadrosaur. So yeah, so either this T-Rex was just unfortunate and didn't eat very well, but yeah, that was noteworthy. But I mean, you want to know, is this just a fluke of these teeth? You want to compare it to something that you know is marine. But Mosasaur teeth are very rare from this deposit and from the Hell Creek in general, because the Hell Creek Formation, I mean, you have to picture this. Just before the time of the Hell Creek Formation, so just before T-Rex dominated North America, we had a sea separating North America's west and east, the Western Interior Seaway. It had a gateway to the north, to the big ocean through Canada, and it had a gateway to the Gulf of Mexico. We don't exactly know when these closed. We don't exactly know when the Western Interior Seaway disappeared. There's a lot of debates about this, not too much existing evidence of this, because erosion is removing everything we need to analyze this. Yeah. But what I asked for was anything marine to compare it to, because you expect the Mosasaur to be marine, and if I want to exclude it being marine, I need to test for everything marine.
Yeah.
So I got a bunch of ammonite fragments. I got a bunch of shark teeth, and I analyzed them too. And it literally was like, the sea is here, they're all here. Just sort of adjacent, just not marine, but brackish at best.
Yeah.
And then all my Mosasaur and Hell Creek material was like nowhere near marine, like so freshwater.
Okay.
Impossible to compare. So I asked again, is there any chance you've got like some older Mosasaur teeth from when the Western Interior Seaway was still there, so I can compare it to that?
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, how strange was it to find a Mosasaur tooth in North Dakota?
Strange. Very strange.
Right?
The previous find was the Bryan Mosasaur, which is like the Bryan member, which is used to be considered brackish, but since I've now measured it, we can say that it was freshwater, or at least over there. And they just have a bunch of bones of Mosasaur from there. And that was the first Hell Creek age Mosasaur.
Because I was wondering, like, have there been more Mosasaur specimen found there in North Dakota? You don't expect it when you look at like the map of America, and if you don't know much about everything that happened way back in the day.
What really is crucial here is the age of the fossils. So North America has a ton of Mosasaur fossils.
Right.
Not just North Dakota, Canada. I mean, several groups of Mosasaurs have been named based on what they uncovered in North America. So, I mean, they are not rare there. But towards the end, they are rare because the Western Interior Seaway disappears. And so when I asked for some older teeth, I did in fact get some older teeth. I analyzed them, and they also do not measure marine signals. What I think happened is as the gates of the Western Interior Seaway, either to the north, to the south, or both, as they closed, or as they were gradually closing, the basin, so it was a lower lying basin, the basin slowly got filled in with rainwater, because that's what we measured. We measured the isotopic signature that is way more consistent with rainwater running through terrestrial rocks, collecting all their minerals. That's the signature we're measuring. So what probably happened is that in the Western Interior Seaway, towards the end of the Cretaceous, is you start to get more influx of rainwater, and so you get freshwater where there used to be marine. The marine, of course, doesn't go away, it doesn't vaporize, it's not light, it's actually heavy. So what happens when fresh water ends up on top of marine water, I'm looking at a Dutch girl, very close to the IJsselmeer, what happens? It stays above, it stays on top of it. So what happens is, just like the IJsselmeer or even the Baltic Sea, is we have underlying marine waters, so saline waters, with on top of that fresh water. And now I started to see a pattern in everything I measured. Everything that had gills, in other words, did not have to come up to breathe, measured brackish or marine. Everything that needed to come up to breathe measured freshwater. There was no reason for them to go that deep.
That's amazing to be able to find that out. What is the significance of Mosasaur for the Netherlands and for the Dutch people?
Ooh. I would even go further and say, what is the significance of Mosasaur for science and enlightenment? So the Mosasaur is, I would say, the first and the biggest extinct animal ever uncovered in the Netherlands. It was actually found near the Meuse River, which is why it's named Mosasaurus. So it's named after the River Meuse, in the type locality of the Maastrichtian, of the last time period of the Cretaceous, which corresponds to the Hell Creek in North Dakota. The Mosasaur was found back when the Netherlands wasn't exactly an independent country. We had a French king at the time. He called himself Rabbit Napoleon, or Konijn Napoleon, because he couldn't pronounce the Dutch word king, koning.
Yeah.
Which is the funny part. When he heard of the Mosasaur being uncovered, he thankfully was unaware that the first specimen was already on its way to Tyler's Museum in Haarlem. But what they considered the holotype was immediately confiscated by the French, and then they took it to Paris. And don't get me wrong, I don't like this whole I occupy your country and I can take all of the things, and I mean all countries and all people, whatever. Let's not go there.
No.
My point is, it came in the hands of Cuvier. And Cuvier was a French naturalist, and Cuvier was already struggling, like many naturalists at the time who were uncovering fossil bones with the concept of extinction. And now this is something you have to picture. Picture a world in which the concept of extinction is considered a hoax. I mean, they did not accept that extinction could be a thing.
Yeah.
But here we suddenly had a mosasaur that clearly could be 6, 7, 8, 11 meters in length, 15 meters in length, clearly in an area where clearly we humans have been living for a while and have never seen anything like that.
Makes
1
no
plus
sense.
1 makes 2.
Yeah.
Things go extinct.
Yeah.
Mosasaur helped with the Enlightenment, with the realization. Things go extinct.
That's amazing.
That's what
So it
Mosasaur
really
did.
played
Not just for the Netherlands.
Yeah, so like it really played a really crucial role in science, scientific research, but also figuring out that, you know, nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
That's incredible. When you look at like the food pyramid, where was Mosasaur placed? Was it like an apex
Yeah.
Predator? Was it
Mosasaurus
very
is
high
an
up?
apex predator, yeah. And the tooth that we found, so I just described Mosasaurus, like the genus. The tooth I found likely does not belong to that part of the Mosasaurian family. We can separate it into 3 different subfamilies by now, and likely this one was sort of Mosasaurus. I mean, yes, the way it looks in Jurassic Park is a good depiction if you're willing to look through your eyelashes and ignore the size, because it's about 6 times off. If you want to take a look at what we found, so we have 1 tooth. I'm not going to assign a genus or a species to 1 tooth.
No.
It's not enough. And my colleagues agreed. We couldn't do this.
Yeah.
I have a lead first author, so we share a first author position, and Nathan was doing all of the comparisons, because one of the things that annoyed most of our reviewers was we have 1 tooth. How do you prove it's a mosasaur?
Valid.
Yeah. So we literally had to compare it, that's what Nathan did, to every other tooth of the Hell Creek. And I mean, a Triceratops tooth is obviously different. So there were some that could immediately, you know, be thrown in the trash, but we had to compare it to T-Rex tooth, theropod dinosaur tooth, so the other raptors and such.
Yeah.
We had to compare it to all types of crocodilia teeth in the whole Hell Creek. And nothing looks like this except prognathodon type mosasaurs. And prognathodons are quite similar to your mosasaurs, but they have more of a bulky, I don't know, pit bull type head.
Yeah, the jaw would be more...
It's more robust,
Yeah.
more... It probably was able to crunch down on harder foods. It was probably still an apex predator, but I mean, I'm not even gonna judge the positions of the eyes based on the tooth. It's
No.
Why is isotopic analysis so important, and how does it help us understand these ancient creatures and their way of life and all that we can find out?
Yeah, isotopic, I'm just gonna first confirm. Isotopic analyses is that cool, and not just in there, in paleontology. It's actually also really cool in forensic sciences. Just picture your cold case and you wanna know roughly where the person lived or where they were killed, or, you know, and you can actually do stable isotope
You can
analyses.
find like environmental
Elements.
Clues. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the police can do that actually in the same lab. So yeah, I'm familiar with their methodology.
Well, that's really cool.
In this case, because something turned to stone, the process of turning to stone will change the geochemical composition of the fossil. We know that will happen. There's almost no way that doesn't happen. So what we want to do is we want to try and exclude that. I've done the same with my fishes in Tanis, where I was able to do XRF because I had very flat surfaces.
Before we continue, she also figured out when the dinosaurs went extinct. We did an interview back in, well, we filmed it in October of 2021. It's been 4 years now. And that video went up on my channel in February of 2022. If you haven't seen that yet, please go there. It's such a fun conversation. And she explains in such thorough detail how the dinosaurs went extinct and how she figured out the timing that it happened in in Boreal Spring. But continue.
Thank you. So in this case, none of my surfaces were flat enough to do X-ray fluorescence. So I couldn't assess the geochemical properties of the tooth in any other type of analysis except for sampling it and measuring the isotopes. However, if you measure just a single isotope, you're always going to get this possibility of what you're observing being the fossilization rather than biology. But if you measure more than one, so I measured 3, then it's really unlikely that all 3 of them show their values because of this fossilization. There's always bound to be a biological component in it. And in this case, because I measured 3 different stable isotopes, so carbon, oxygen, actually I measured oxygen twice, from the carbonate fraction and from the phosphate fraction, as well as strontium, and all of them indicate a freshwater environment, which means this is not the result of the fossilization accidentally making it look like the environmental factor. So that's why I measured more than 1, because we have a more robust piece of evidence than just showing the 1.
That's incredible. Looking back now, like you've had a publication in the past, and like I said, it's been a couple of years now. How was it?
2 in between. They were just not as significant.
Sorry, I didn't hear about them. I stole you. I mean,
I robbed everyone watching of more interviews with my sister. My apologies. We will rectify this.
I don't know who was too busy, if it was you or me.
Both. But how was it for you having another big publication with like headlights on it and people wanting to...
I don't know. I'm actually a little shook that there's quite a bit of interest in this. I actually feel like I want to tell you the funny story of how I got into this project.
Please do.
I defended my PhD last year, but back when our first interview was released in 2022, I was very actively trying to find a solution for my PhD. Long story short, my PhD was actually going to be on fossils from Siberia, and a war had broken out on the day my first paper came out. So
yeah, it was fun.
All of the fossils from Siberia were no longer something I could confidently analyze and hope that the war would be over and then submit it. By now I'm a doctor, so clearly that would have not worked. So I was looking for a solution, and I had met the people of the NDGS at SVP, so the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, the conference in Toronto in 2022. And I met them and I said, can I please join you guys in looking in the area of North Dakota in public land for a similar locality as the Tanis site, but on public land. I want others to be able to measure too. And I went back on the first possible occasion, which was June 2023 or September 2023. So in September 2023, we go in and we start looking, and we have to almost immediately, for reasons completely outside the scope of what I anticipated, we had to quit for safety reasons. So there was like, there goes your funding, there goes your project, there goes your plan. Good luck with that PhD. And I was feeling it, but I agreed. Safety first, safety always first.
So when you say safety, was it because of the environmental things? Like you were in North Dakota again?
I'm not even sure if this was a safety was really, we were running risks, or we decided not to. We simply decided not to run the risk. We got into a situation where we literally had to decide on that moment, are we going to try and push on and assume that nothing's wrong? Or are we going to run the risk of having a confrontation of any kind? And we decided that we couldn't run that risk.
Yeah.
And I agreed that we weren't going to run that risk. So what happened is we retreated. I joined the NDGS people and started digging in Medora, and found a bunch of T-Rex teeth and other stuff too. I even cut myself in a T-Rex tooth there, and it bled.
Of course she does.
All my poor colleagues had to hear of my horrible jokes of T-Rex did this for the rest of the dig.
That is one of the best jokes that you can make. If it was a scar, you could be like, I got bit by T-Rex.
Yeah,
I cut myself.
Didn't really scar. Sadly. Nonetheless, we went back on the last day, and I just looked at Clint, my colleague, and I said, this is the risk. This is the risk we take. We could have even gone out and found nothing. It would have been the same story. However, is there any chance you have a problem on the shelf? I can help solve? Is there any win-win situation we can get out of this? Don't feel obliged. I only want it if it's a win-win. And he said, well, so we found this Mosasaur tooth next to a T-Rex tooth in the Hell Creek. And we just have no way of proving that it was a shed tooth. We have no way of proving that it was that the Mosasaur lived in fresh water and the reviewers aren't having it. And I'm like, but we can measure that. And he said, can you measure that? And I'm like, yeah. And the rest I just explained.
Yeah.
That's how I got onto this project. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm really happy I asked for a win-win.
No.
But in all fairness, I never expected that this would be as sexy. But I think it comes down to what I just explained to you.
Yeah.
The fundamental importance of mosasaurs as a whole.
Yeah.
And then now knowing, because there were suggestions already. There was one study from North America that showed that older mosasaurs visited freshwater from time to time.
Yeah.
But that freshwater signal was only measured in the oxygen isotopes, and it was not as strong as in ours. Our signal is much stronger, and we have 2 other isotopes. So we don't have a suggestion, we have a confirmation.
Yeah.
And there was another one, a smaller one in Hungary, also looking like it could have lived in fresh water. Again, they only measured, in this case, I think it was strontium isotopes, but they couldn't confirm that it wasn't a visitor. And in this case, because I measured more than one mosasaur, and all of them show freshwater signals, we can say not only did mosasaurs visit freshwater, we have to now account for the Hell Creek environment, not just having scary T-Rex on land, but also having scary things in the rivers.
And it's not difficult for most marine animals to adapt to fresh water.
Exactly. You've nailed it on the head. So the adaptation from freshwater to marine is incredibly significant because our bodies cannot handle the salt. We have to dispel of the salt. So that's why you see, for instance, marine iguanas, they shoot the salt out of their nose. It's very charming.
Yeah.
But for instance, this mosasaur, they already had an adaptation to salt, but that doesn't mean that they can't live without the salt. You actually see it in modern animals as well. So I think it was the marine crocodile that also lives upstream. We have killer whales or orcas sometimes go upriver. We have several types of dolphins occasionally go upriver. So
I've heard of the dolphins in Loch Ness in Scotland.
Yeah.
So the thing is, a lot of bigger, especially bigger marine predators are very likely to explore freshwaters if, for instance, there isn't enough food in the ocean, or if they are simply struggling for some reason and they decide to go for the easy food.
When you look at your entire journey so far from your very first thesis, I think that was the
so the
dinosaur
first paper of my PhD thesis is actually the culmination of originally my master thesis, and I've of course done a lot of work on it again in my PhD before it got published. But so that's the first paper of my PhD. The second paper is the description of the fishes from Tanis. Came out in 2023. I am not the lead author because fish have too many bones, and so Eric Hilton led that paper. Because he was way better at describing all of the different elements of these fishes. We did rewrite the evolution of the group a little bit because of that. So we're talking paddlefishes, sturgeons. It was always assumed that they had an evolutionary history going across the Atlantic, so through Europe to the Atlantic. We've now deduced that it has had to have been Pacific, so from Asia to America.
Yeah.
Also, in the latest Cretaceous, you had way more sturgeons and paddlefishes than we do today.
Oh.
Way more. So the third paper in my PhD is actually a reply article. So I have replied to the De Palma et al. 2021 paper.
Yeah.
We could do a whole video on that. Let's not.
No.
And then we have the fourth paper, which is actually this one, so in order. The fifth paper was published in January this year, which is actually a methodology paper. So I wrote a paper in which we present our new tool that we described and created, which is so we do a lot of synchrotron scanning of fossils. I think I do a proper description of that in my first interview with you.
Yeah.
When you come home with a stack of images, you need a computer that can run it, the analyses, you need to have very expensive software, you need to have like 500 gigabytes of RAM, most scientists do not have funding for computers like that. software like that. And so it's a bit of it's gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And it's not really helping the progression of science. So our tool is now, so we've created it's called ML for paleo, machine learning for paleo.
Okay.
And so we developed a machine learning tool which automates the segmentation of these scans. So you train a few slides and then it can just run for you and you can correct, which is actually something I prefer over most of the software we had up to that point, which is like you do all this work to train it and then it comes out like nothing you wanted and then you have to start over.
Yeah.
And in this case, you can just revise. You can even be lazy and just do one and say train. And then correction, train again. Correction, train again.
Yeah.
So it's a lot smoother in that sense. And it's browser based.
Oh.
Your computer is not doing the heavy lifting.
Oh, but that's good. That makes it available to like all scientists that need it.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that came out in January.
So when you look at your very near future, do you have things on the horizon? You may not be able to talk about it, but at least
it depends on how you define the horizon,
Mm.
because pretty much every attempt I have made in my search of finding a similar location as Tanis in North Dakota has resulted in one of the team members, including myself, accidentally tripping over things that were big and sticking out of the ground and called fossils. And in some cases, some of them are significantly interesting. And I will have to go back. So when, in terms of the horizon, if it's like ground level, yes, things are poking out of the horizon. Do I know enough already to tell you about it? No.
No.
But is it reason for me to keep getting funding and going back? Absolutely.
So we might expect some more stuff from North Dakota at the hands of Melanie.
Yeah, but typically there's like a 3 to 5 years delay between finding and describing.
Of course. I mean, it takes a couple of years.
Even with archaeology, and when it's something like small or simple, even that can take a couple of years.
The more significant the find, the longer it will take.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what the future will bring. And of course, whenever there's something, you will be back on the channel. Again, apologies for the fact that I didn't have her for the 2 other papers. You can shoot me in the comments. It's fine. I can handle it. But from now on, I will make sure that she will get all the limelight that she deserves.
There's no need for Kaylee to apologize. I don't have time to do a video for every paper.
No, I know. And you lived in Sweden for a while, and finally she lives in the Netherlands again. Holy hell. I can actually hop in my car and drive to her. That had not been possible for a number of years. So, I mean, very happy to have her back in the Netherlands. She lives on the other side of the IJsselmeer. So, I mean, we have a lake between us and it's quite big. But then again, we have the dike, the Afsluitdijk, that connects us. And we live about an hour away from each other now, which is very different compared to me having to go to Schiphol Airport, get on a plane, fly for about 2.5 hours, land near Uppsala, have her pick me up, and then have her drive me to her home. Because, you know, that's a whole day.
In a blizzard.
In a blizzard. She picked me up and it was a blizzard and it was not a great day, but she drove fantastically.
And then my windscreen wiper fluid ran out.
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
Oh my God. We've been through the things. I mean, we're sisters. We can handle things from each other. So
no, but it's way more fun to be able to come over like this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, telling all my viewers about your latest publication. I'm excited for the future. I'm mostly excited to have you back on the channel again.
Oh, thanks.
And I will promise you'll see her again soon. Like, soon is relative when we talk about history and paleontology, so like it could be another 4 or 5 years, but still, soon.
I love how you said that you're excited about the future.
Yeah,
Because I'm excited about the past.
Holy shit, yeah. You'd think.
And at number 1, we have the discovery of Dragon Man being Denisovan. Something we all thought, but we had no evidence. But now we do. I'm going to tell you all about the breaking news that Dragon Man is actually a Denisovan. I will tell you all about how the researchers came to this conclusion, which means that we've had a Denisovan skull available for research for the past 7 years. And I will tell you all about the Harbin cranium, you know, the skull itself. So in 2022, I made a video on Dragon Man, and in it, I discussed the possibility of Dragon Man being a Denisovan. But back when I made that video, there was no evidence for this. But that evidence has now been found through ancient DNA research. I've also made videos on the Denisovans and how they were discovered through DNA, including a documentary piece I released last October. I highly recommend watching those videos for more in-depth information on the Denisovans and for a more in-depth look at the discovery of the Dragon Man skull. So first off, before I get into the breaking news, a little backstory on the discovery of the Harbin cranium, because this story starts nearly 100 years ago when a Chinese worker came across a giant human-like skull during the construction of a bridge in the Heilongjiang province in China in 1933. The Heilongjiang province is often called the Longjiang. This literally means Dragon River, and this is where the name Dragon Man comes from. After the Chinese worker discovered the skull, he buried and hid it in a well, which was unbeknownst to the rest of the world. And it wasn't until he was on his deathbed in 2018 that he revealed the location to its family, who then donated it to be scientifically studied. The skull was one of the largest skulls ever discovered belonging to a species in the Homo genus, and it falls within the range of Neanderthal and Homo sapiens skulls. Actually even bigger than some of the Homo heidelbergensis skulls, and this was actually corroborated by anthropologist Chris Stringer, who was a member of the initial research team. So back when the skull had just been donated, the researchers used sophisticated geometrical analysis, including strontium isotopic ratios and X-ray fluorescence dating methods, among others. And they were able to date for certain that the skull has to be at least 146,000 years old, placing it in the Middle Pleistocene, which is known as one of the most dynamic eras of migrations of archaic humans. So the initial team that researched the skull estimate that it belonged to a man who was approximately 50 years of age when he died, who lived somewhere between 146,000 and 296,000 years ago. The cranial features are a mix of archaic and modern humans, with large eye sockets and thick brow ridges like we see in Neanderthals. But the face itself looks a lot more like the bigger version of Homo sapiens, with a brain size equal to that of us, modern humans. The cheekbones are flat and low with a shallow canine cavity. The face itself seems reduced and tucked under the brain case. So back in 2021, a team of 5 Chinese researchers stirred up some controversy when they released a paper suggesting that the Harbin cranium belonged to a previously unknown species of human, and they thereby officially gave this new species the name of Homo longi and nicknamed the species Dragon Man. So according to anthropologist Chris Stringer, the skull had a very interesting combination of features. The morphology clearly shows that it's a distinct lineage originating in East Asia. The morphology was not Neanderthal and not Homo sapiens. In fact, Stringer believed that the Harbin cranium was most likely a Denisovan skull, the first one ever to be found if that was the case, and he had hoped DNA analysis will give us more answers, although this has been very difficult on a 146,000-year-old skull that has not been preserved in the perfect conditions. So as you can imagine, Stringer and others therefore weren't too pleased that the skull was published under a new official name, Homo longi. So after the paper on Homo longi had released, the initial team of researchers were contacted by paleogeneticist Xiaomei Fu of the Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology in Beijing, who asked if she could try to extract DNA from the skull. Why would she be the one to ask this, you may ask yourself? Well, Xiaomei Fu was actually the first to investigate the DNA from a very tiny finger bone that was discovered in the Denisova cave in 2010. That revealed to the world that a previously unknown extinct human species had lived in that area, and they were given the name of the Denisovans. But now, in June of 2025, Chris Stringer was proven to be right, after ancient DNA research revealed that the Harbin cranium is indeed a Denisovan. So how was Xiaomei Fu able to extract this ancient DNA? Well, she first attempted to retrieve ancient DNA from the bones and teeth of the Harbin cranium. Unfortunately, This was without success, due to the fact that the at least 146,000-year-old skull was not preserved under the best circumstances in the past 100 years. So Chow Mei decided to try a different method, extracting proteins. Proteins are usually more hardy than DNA and will be preserved for a lot longer. And because proteins are what the genes in the DNA code for, they can also provide genetic clues about the DNA that generated these proteins. So information on 95 proteins were collected from the petrous bone, which is a dense part of the skull near the inner ear. And these ancient proteins matched the proteins in the bones of other Denisovans who had been found from Tibet to Taiwan. But as you can imagine, she still wanted to find DNA to be able to confirm if the skull belonged to a Denisovan. So she focused her attention on the dental plaque on the single remaining tooth of the Harbin cranium, which honestly was a long shot. While plaque is a very hardy material, usually researchers find bacterial DNA in it, and it's even rarer to find the DNA of the owner of the teeth. But against all odds, Chow Mei discovered a tiny amount of DNA in the plaque that was human, and this DNA looked sufficiently old enough to have belonged to the skull itself, and not belonged to one of the people who have handled the skull since its discovery. She was then able to match the ancient DNA from the plaque to mitochondrial DNA from previously sequenced Denisovan genomes, confirming that Dragon Man is indeed a Denisovan. Although one of the initial researchers, paleoanthropologist Shi Jun-ni, thinks that it was his DNA fragments that were recovered, due to the fact that he handled the specimens so many times, and he is not convinced that the protein analysis is sufficiently specific, and he is also not of the belief that the degraded DNA is actually enough to identify the specimen of the Harbin cranium as belonging to the species of Denisovan. But you and I, as onlookers and history enthusiasts, must remember that in the world of paleoanthropology, when it comes to major discoveries like these, there will always be researchers at odds with each other, due to their own personal interests and beliefs. Shi Jun-ni was a co-author on the initial paper from 2021 that presented a new species to the world, Homo longi, and therefore it is understandable that he has his own personal bias when it comes to new information being presented about the same skull years later. Shi Jun-ni was also not affiliated with the two papers that were released in the journals of Cell and Science on June 18th, 2025, yesterday. Chow Mei Fu, however, does acknowledge that a substantial portion, in fact nearly 4/5, of the DNA that she had extracted was clearly the result of contamination, but that she used the established protocols to select only the DNA that is indeed ancient. And that is how she found out that the tiny amount of DNA that remains, as well as the proteins, confidently identifies the skull as Denisovan. It contains 27 gene variants, only found in the 7 known Denisovan individuals, and therefore none of these could arise from modern human contamination, she said. So 2 different methods gave the same result, which makes most paleoanthropologists much more confident that the Harbin cranium belonged to a Denisovan. But after this information revealed that the Harbin cranium belongs to a Denisovan, a new question arises. What should we name them? Since Denisovans have never been formally described as a species and never given an official species name, while Homo longi was formally described, should we now refer to Denisovans as Homo longi? Well, some anthropologists say yes. Homo longi should be the appropriate species name of this group of ancient humans, since the Harbin cranium is one of the most complete fossils found of a Denisovan so far. But other researchers don't think that it's useful to assign separate species names to hominins from this period. Paleogeneticist Svante Pabo says that it's not helpful to assign them different species names, as they are closely related groups that have been shown to mix and have fertile offspring with each other and with our own direct ancestors. So he said that if a species name is needed, he would simply call them Homo sapiens. I personally would say give the Denisovans the official name of Homo denisova, which would be a homage to the first researchers, and have the species be named after the cave where the first fossils were discovered, which resulted in the discovery of this previously unknown species. But that's just me, that's my thoughts. It's not important to this video or to anything else, but just wanted to put that in. And then there's the recently proposed Homo juluensis from last December, where the researchers from that study were of the belief that Denisovans were part of Homo juluensis, even though they did recognize Homo longi as a separate species. Therefore, I think it is safe to assume that they no longer believe that the Denisovans were part of the species of juluensis. So, Denisovans or Homo longi, whatever the name eventually will be, we now know that the Harbin cranium belongs to a Denisovan individual. But there you have it, the breaking news that the Harbin cranium, the dragon man's skull, belonged to a Denisovan, and that we finally officially have a confirmed Denisovan skull, which will eventually lead to us learning more about Denisovan morphology. So what do you think of this latest discovery? A Denisovan skull? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm curious about your top 5 discoveries of 2025, so let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed watching, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and click that bell icon if you want to be notified whenever I upload. If you haven't seen my previous videos yet, then click the card in the upper right corner or click one of the links in the description down below. And you can also click a video in the end card. And I would like to say a massive thank you to my patrons and my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting me. Truly, it means the world to me. You all made this year fantastic for me. And of course, I hope that all of you have an amazing end of the year, and I wish you all the best for 2026.